Hello everybody, today I'm going to look a bit more at these autopsies of the children. Obviously this is supposed to be the funeral in the big coffins. Everybody has seen that part, so yeah, that's what we're talking about, is the autopsies of Bella and Cece Watts. So, I found this newspaper report in the UK, it's the Daily Mirror, how Chris Watts, harrowing, everything's harrowing, and basically just going through this report. Tammy Lee was there, the district attorney was there, and basically, yeah, just read those bits there. You can slow it down. I'm sure lots of people have looked at this autopsy before. Because there it will say that they were found in the bottom of the tanks, wearing nappies and the clothes. I just find this all incredible. When I was looking up about oil tanks before, when that oil goes into those tanks, it could be boiling. The oil could be boiling. Yeah, that's what, and they open up the thief tank and have to be careful in case the oil is boiling. Those children were in there for 3 days. So this is another one now. This is the Daily Mail, I think it is. Harrowing photographs, written report, painstaking process of retrieving the daughters. It says here, basically, that it took 14 hours to get them out. And that basically they had to make pools of oil to be saved to preserve the bodies of the girls after they were removed from the tanks, and the fact that how bad it was for the troopers, that they had to wear, they could only be in there for a few, even with breathing apparatus, they could only be in there for a few minutes due to the toxic fumes. But as you can see, right, they had to preserve the bodies. So do you see that? The bodies had to be preserved in pools of oil to go off. Pools of oil to preserve the bodies for the next part. And here it says here that they'd been in the tanks for 3 days and their skin was coming off. So basically these people could only spend minutes around them with breathing apparatus on. They had to take a pool of oil with them to preserve the bodies. So that's what's happening from the crime scene. But that's not what's happening when you get to the autopsy. So here we go, Bella's autopsy. Yep, at this point they say asphyxiation, the trauma to her is what's in her mouth. She's got obviously this long scratch on her leg, cut scratch on her leg, and bits on her shoulder and back. But I mean, considering she was 2 inches too big for the hole, I don't think so. But anyway, so we've got a little bit there, and it actually says water and sludge debris in the stomach. Yes, it does say that. But when we get down here, it does say in a state of death, and they've been put in the oil battery. But this is talking about you can only last minutes around them, you know, their skin's falling off. To preserve the bodies, you've got to put oil around them. So that's not really what's coming out of that autopsy. And here it says, so Bella was received in an open bag, an unsealed bag, wrapped in a bedsheet. So that doesn't fit in with what they've just said back here. Here they're reporting pools of oil then had to be saved to preserve the bodies of the girls after they were removed from the tanks. So how was she received in an unsealed bag? There was no oil. They're not talking about any oil being with these children, only that there's mention that they were put in the oil tanks. But I'm telling you, to be put in there like that, right, you wouldn't know what colour their pyjamas were. You wouldn't... come on. All those chemicals all over their bodies, inside their bodies for 3 days, probably hot. So how can they see all this? How come the person doing the autopsy hasn't got special equipment on, isn't talking about the special equipment, isn't talking about the fumes, isn't talking about this? It's just not talking about the right things. I'm sorry, because it can't be true, okay? Because they the coroner would had to have been wearing special equipment just to cope with these bodies. This wasn't just, you know, and when you read this autopsy, so many parts of them were in perfect condition. But if you'd been dumped in oil for 3 days and, you know, basically when they take you out, your skin's falling off, I don't think so. So I don't see how these autopsies match what was really happening if these children were put into oil tanks. Yes, it says there that they had some fluid in their stomach, in their cavities. But I mean, 3 days in the heat with hot oil, with all those chemicals. Basically, everybody was kind of told that he was put in there because the body they were starting to disintegrate. So if the bodies were starting to disintegrate, how did they get such a perfect autopsy without mentioning any of the chemicals, without special equipment, having to do things differently because these children are in oil? The oil's mentioned, but it doesn't seem a problem. It's as if they were dunked in the oil and an hour later you found them. Because then they could have carried on probably. But if they were that bad, right, these children were sealed in coffins, weren't they, because of the toxins in their bodies. You wouldn't want to put a match near them or something like that. That's what that's about. So if they had to go into sealed coffins, then how come none of the coroner is talking about any of these things? So yeah, there's a mention there of being in the oil. Okay, the witnesses who are present there. And then it goes on to the clothing. There you go. So she was received in an unsealed bag. The only thing they're mentioning is the clothing. And they know what colour they are. Pink. Like with Bella. Pink. How would you see the pink if you've been submerged in oil for 3 days? I don't think you'd see, oh look, there's a pink pair of pyjamas. And again, the nappy. Any mother knows when you've got a nappy that's full of liquid, it starts to disintegrate quite quickly. So how come she was wearing the nappy if she'd been submerged in the oil for 3 days? The nappy would have disintegrated. I'm sorry, none of this adds up. They are not talking enough about all the toxins and all those things. They say slippage, skin slippage, but this was more than skin slippage. They said, hang on. So from this same newspaper report, it says here the girls had been in the tanks for 3 days and their skin was coming off. This wasn't, as they were putting them down out of the tanks, their skin was falling off. But skin slippage is something different. I know this is a sad thing to talk about, but when we die, our skin slips. So it's called skin slippage. But what happened to those girls by being put in the tanks was something much, much more than skin slippage. Basically, they were starting to disintegrate. So that means that if the skin was falling off because of disintegration, because of the oil, not just because they are deceased, then imagine what the underskin and all that would be in there, under their skin, going into their body. It's not just going to be in the cavities, is it? It's going to be everywhere. It's going to be, and anyway, like I said, the coroner would have to have done it in a special room with special equipment on. There's no mention of any special equipment used here. Masks, nothing. Nothing about the fumes, the smell, nothing. There's nothing there. This is just like, oh, well, things were in remarkable condition inside their body. Well, because they're dead, don't forget. But then, how can everything be remarkable when they've been submerged in those chemicals? They're only little. So I'm really sorry, I just don't see that this autopsy matches up to what happened. I'm going to show you one more time. It says harrowing. It says warning, graphic details. It says hazardous materials used in an incident. It says 400, the two 400 barrel tanks, they were emptied, but they were that big. So pools of oil had to be saved to preserve the bodies of the girls after they were removed from the tanks. It says the troopers could only spend minutes inside, even with breathing apparatus, because of the toxic fumes. It says that because they'd been in there for 3 days, their skin was coming off as they were being removed. No mention of any of that in the autopsy. So all this would have caused big problems for the autopsy, but not one mention of it. So I'm sorry, there's something wrong with all of it.